Do you love flowers? What kinds of flowers do you love?
I love flowers. My favorite flowers are white roses and white lilies, which, in my opinion, are forever a classic match. I often put a huge bunch of white roses and white lilies on the table in the living room and in the dining room. Those gorgeous flower arrangements give an intimate flavor to my place, and the fragrance is irresistible.
This question sure has a lot of loves in it. Do you love flowers? What kind of flowers do you love? It's kind of unusual for them to put two questions together into one. I don't think I've ever seen a question like that before. Also, I've never seen a question where they ask you if you love something. And I kind of thought the woman was going to say that the flowers have an intoxicating aroma again. But this time she went for a fragrance that's irresistible, so she's switching up the language a little bit.
Do you love planting flowers? Why or why not?
Actually, I adore flowers, but I am not an expert in planting them. I am telling you, no matter what flowers I plant, they would always end up dying. It's heartbreaking.
Do Chinese love planting flowers?
I think so, especially those elderly people. They always plant flowers on their balconies. They water them and fertilize them every day. As time goes by, they have an emotion to the flowers they plant.
Okay, so here we have the love again. Do Chinese people love planting flowers? And I think I mentioned before that in the part 1 questions, you're never going to hear the name of your nationality. And in the response, we have this determiner, those elderly people. Who is she talking about? So, unless you specify who you're talking about, don't use determiners like those. And again, she generalizes by saying they always plant flowers on their balconies. Really? Anyway, then when we get to the vocabulary, as time goes by, they have an emotion to the flowers they plant. Now, as time goes by, that means that the situation changes. So it goes from there being no, let's say, emotion to there being an emotion. So the verb we're looking for is not have, it's develop. So as time goes by, they develop. And you can have an emotion to flowers. You can have an emotional attachment. So she should be saying they develop an emotional attachment to the flowers they plant.
Where do Chinese people usually plant flowers? In gardens or on balconies?
Well, it depends on they live in houses or flats. If they live in houses, they usually have a garden to plant all sorts of flowers. But if they live in flats, they can only plant some flowers in containers on the windowsills or on balconies.
Pretty much none of the answers about flowers are well extended. I guess it's difficult to come up with something to say if you don't provide any specific examples. But let's look at the language. Here she says, well, it depends on they live in houses or flats. If you are giving somebody a choice, choose either A or B, and it depends on whether it's A or B, then you have to use the word whether. So in this sentence, it should be, well, it depends on whether they live in houses or flats.
What influence do you think planting flowers has on people?
Planting flowers can cultivate people's temperaments, and when flowers are in full blossom, they are a blaze of color, and the fragrance is intoxicating.
What special meanings do different flowers have exactly?
Well, I am not an expert of flowers. To my knowledge, roses stand for love, lilies mean purity, carnations represent happiness and the love for mums, and tulips symbolize dignity. And I think these meanings might change in different cultural backgrounds.
If you had a garden, what would you plant? Flowers or vegetables? Why?
I think I can have my cake and eat it too, by planting both of them.
Just about that having your cake and eating it too. I'm not saying this is wrong. I guess it depends on whether or not you think it's unusual to have vegetables and flowers together. But to have your cake and eat it too means to have two good things at the same time, especially things that are not usually possible to have together, as in this example here. So, to me personally, I don't think it's unusual to have these two together, but maybe some people do.
Flowers are gorgeous and the fragrance is intoxicating. And the bright side of the vegetables is that they are eatable and organic. The best part of it is that I can save big bucks on buying vegetables.
When do Chinese usually send flowers?
When it comes to some festivals or some special occasions, we usually send flowers as a kind of sincere blessing, like Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, someone's birthday, or visiting a patient.
What kinds of flowers do Chinese usually send to each other?
It depends on which occasion we are talking about here. If it is for Valentine's Day, roses must be the ideal choice. But if it is for Mother's Day, nothing would be better than a bunch of well-wrapped carnations. If it is for visiting a patient, lilies would sound wise.
Just think for a moment of the sentence, he sounds wise, or she sounds wise. He or she would sound wise because of what they say, or maybe because of what they write. Now, lilies don't write or say anything. They cannot sound wise. They don't make any sound, as far as I know. So, lilies would sound like a good idea. Okay. Lilies would sound wise. No, they don't sound like anything.
Do you love birds? What kinds of birds do you love?
To be honest, I am not a big fan of it. I guess the main reason is that I don't really understand what they say when they chirp loudly. Just kidding. But still, don't fancy them. If I have to pick a kind of bird I like, that would be parrots. The only reason is that they can be trained to speak our language. It is super cool.
Just a tiny problem with referencing. Maybe so tiny it's not really worth mentioning, but here it is.
What special meanings do different birds have exactly?
Well, I am not an expert of flowers. To my knowledge, doves stand for peace, magpies mean auspiciousness, crows represent bad luck, and hawks symbolize ambition. And I think these meanings might change in different cultural backgrounds.
Well, some of the vocabulary is good, like the auspiciousness, and maybe the ambition as well. But what happened with this answer? They spliced together the audio of two different people, and then they spliced together the audio from the wrong answer. They talk about flowers in a question that asks about birds. And even then, in the audio about flowers, they use the wrong preposition. The preposition for expert is not off. You can be an expert at, and then you can have a gerund. So you can have somebody who's an expert at sailing, or an expert at whatever, V-I-N-G. Or you can be an expert in a certain field, but not of.
Do Chinese people love birds? Why?
I suppose so, especially those elderly people. They love to walk birds in the parks in the morning. But I don't think young guys really get a kick out of birds.
Now, when I first heard this is what I thought. That she meant people do this, which to me was really weird. But then I looked online and I saw this. So, maybe people in China really do take their birds for walks. I don't know. So, who am I to say that what she's saying doesn't make sense? I guess China is just kind of weird about their birds. But now, here when she talks about young guys, I don't think young guys really get a kick out of birds. Please develop the idea a little bit more. Actually, also, stop calling them young guys. Who are you talking to? Are you talking about young males? Are you talking about young people? If you say guys all the time, it can be a little bit confusing to know who you're talking about. And if you're saying they don't get a kick out of birds, all right, so fine, why not? And if they don't get a kick out of birds, what do they get a kick out of? Try to take your ideas a little bit further.